Hey, this is Tony with Salt Strong, and in this video I wanted to answer a common question we've been getting recently, and it has to do with how often you should change out the line on your fishing reels. Now, this is going to depend on whether you're using monofilament or fluorocarbon or, braided line on your reels. Now, when it comes to fluorocarbon and monofilament, you're going to have to change that out more often because it does become brittle over time. When it's exposed to salt water and also UV rays, it can become brittle and weaken. And also, when you start seeing your monofilament or your fluorocarbon become very, coily, it coils up a lot, it's not, limp and straight, that's when you're going to want to replace it. So I would say at least once every 6 months to a year should be adequate when replacing monofilament or fluorocarbon on your fishing reels. Now, when it comes to braid, there's really no reason to replace it within a year. This stuff can be on your reels for years. I have one reel, it's been on, I think now for about 3 years. But what it really comes down to is how much line you have on your reel and also the condition of the line. So when it comes to how much line you have on your reel, this reel here, I have lost quite a bit of line, and you're gonna notice there's a pretty big gap from the braid to the edge of the spool. When there's a big gap like that, it's going to affect your casting distance. Also, if you hook into a big fish, you have less line on your reel now, so that fish can have the chance to spool you if it does run or if it is a really big fish. Now, some people say, oh, you could just splice some new braid onto the existing braid, but I honestly don't like doing that. That just creates another weak point with a knot within your line there. Also, with that knot being on your spool pretty close to the end of your line, you could run into some issues with your line actually catching that knot as you're casting, as it's coming off the spool, and that can lead to, inaccurate casts and also possible wind knots because of your line getting caught on that knot. So when you do run low on line on your spool, time to replace it, put some new braid on there. Now, with inshore fishing, you really don't need a lot of line on your reels. Anywhere from 100 to 150 yards is plenty. So first you would put on some mono backing to fill up that extra space, and then top it off with that 100 to 150 yards of braid. Now, the only other real time that I'll replace the braid on my fishing reels is if that braid looks frayed up. It will look frayed up, or it'll kind of look fuzzy. If that's the case, I will replace it. Or, it may only be a short section of that braid, from the end of the braid, maybe 20 yards or so. That's not too big of a deal. You can usually just cut that off and get away with it. But if you're starting to pull out line and you notice almost half the spool is fuzzy or frayed up, that's when I'll replace that braid. Now, a big mistake a lot of people make when replacing their braid is that they'll see the color fading on their line and then they'll replace it because they think the line's going bad. And that's not the case. It's just the color. The color isn't permanent. It's just a dye that's on the braid. And as that color comes off, it's not weakening that line. It'll change the color. It may not look great, but that line is still 100% good to go. So if you see the color fading, that's no reason to change out the braid on your fishing reels. And then one last thing, something very important to check. If you do notice that your line is getting frayed up or it is fuzzy and you really haven't been fishing any structure, or that line hasn't been hitting any structure, you want to check whatever rod that your line or your reel was on, because if those guides are damaged in any way, if they have a nick on them, especially the very tip, the rod tip, that guide, that's where the line has the most pressure on. If that guide is damaged, it's going to fray up all that line that is out. Or if you notice your line breaking, when you make a cast or when you go to make a hook set, check that guide, because that will save you a lot of money and a lot of time replacing line on your fishing reels. Now, if you do happen to need some new braid to put on your fishing reels, we do sell it on our shop page at fishstrong.com. We have Power Pro and also Daiwa J braid. And if you are one of our insider members, keep in mind that you do get up to 20% off everything on the shop page, so be sure to take advantage of that.
If you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we're the best online fishing club in America because we actually guarantee that you'll catch more fish while saving time and also money on the tackle you need. We do this through premium education, our exclusive insider fishing community, and huge discounts on the best tackle for saltwater anglers. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com. Otherwise, we hope to see you again soon.